You've probably heard ColorPop a few times today. Matt Onwig, I think Joel said it. Chris talked about it a bit. We sell makeup, lipstick, other stuff I don't know much about. I know a lot more about makeup than I care to, just like Chris. And it's broken WooCommerce a few times for us pretty badly. So, like Dre said, I've worked with him. I used to work for WooThemes for a while, about 2 years in WooCommerce support. I was answering tickets when 1.6 broke, when 2.0 broke your site. Usually it was just replacing your theme files, but those were fun times. It was explosive growth and learned a lot about WooCommerce and the insides thanks to that. Went on to work for Web Dev Studios. They make big WordPress for big brands, I think is their slogan. From there, moved on to maintain one of their WordPress maintenance services, and June last year, moved on to ColorPop. So they originally found me middle of November 2014, and it was 2 weeks to Black Friday, and it was our site crashed for 5 days on Labor Day, so please help us survive Black Friday. It's gonna crash, we know it, just help us. And we survived. New servers, replaced everything, a whole bunch of front-end optimizations, got through it, survived, and it was great. So after that, kept growing and growing and growing. If you look on Alexa, traffic is, we're ranked 625 in the entire US, 2,400 in the entire world in terms of traffic to our site. So it is a pretty large site. They've actually got traffic numbers there. So 167,000 daily unique visitors, 2.6 million daily page views, 2.9 million monthly unique visitors, and 76.7 million monthly page views. So we've broken WooCommerce. Like Chris said, though, it's not about traffic, it's not about products. And that's why I'm here today, because with all that, we don't have a huge product catalog. We have 300, 400 products, and with a lot of traffic, but it converts pretty well. So you've all heard WooCommerce or WordPress talks about scaling. It's all cache your site, cache everything, cache it all, and you're gonna scale. That doesn't work in WooCommerce because you're adding to cart, you're placing orders, you're writing to the database. So there's 3 types of scale within WordPress: lots of traffic, lots of products, lots of orders. Lots of traffic, static cache everything. Within WooCommerce, though, there's a couple other things you have to take into account. You're gonna have logged in users, and almost every caching solution out there for WooCommerce and WordPress bypasses the cache if your user logs in. So let's say you have 2,000 logged in users, you're serving uncached pages on the entire website to all users. Every time they go to a product page, it's pulling a new query of every single comment on that product. Your site's gonna crash. There's another little piece of WooCommerce you might not know is there. It is one JavaScript file. And when we moved to WP Engine in March last year, we didn't know about it then either. We were doing load testing to see what kind of environment we were gonna be moved onto. Whether your theme has a cart that updates in the header or not, every single page load, there's an AJAX request to refresh that cart. It was at that time. I don't know if it's still there. It's been a few releases since then. We doubled our throughput to the entire site in our load testing just by removing this one JavaScript file that wasn't even being used. I'll have a few links on Twitter. My Twitter's going to be at the end of the presentation, and I'll tell you all about it there. So you know how to scale with lots of traffic, maybe. So how do you scale with a lot of products? Again, static cache is going to be your best friend. Who cares if you have 300 products or 300,000 products? You don't need to worry about loading those every single time. If you have 200 people on your site, doesn't matter. If you have 2,000 people, doesn't matter. Just cache all your product pages. Problem is mostly solved. Now, when you're generating those pages the first time, for it to be able to be cached, there's a few things you can do to speed it up. Your customer reviews, if you have a lot of traffic, chances are you have a lot of reviews. The normal WordPress settings, I don't think paginates those. So if you have 600 reviews, it's going to try and load all 600 on the same page. And that's not too efficient. So just by enabling the WordPress setting to paginate comments, you'll likely make your product pages faster. There's also a hidden setting within WooCommerce, not really hidden, but there's a verified owner label that can be shown on all the product reviews, which means every single review on a product page being loaded, there's a query to the database trying to check if this customer has bought that product. And when you have, say, 600 or 1,000 or more reviews, and maybe you're not paginating them, you can imagine what your database is going to do when you try and send all those queries to it. Lastly, on the products, if you have a lot of them, don't use WordPress search. We all know it's not built to be like a Google, and everyone who's running a WooCommerce store wants a Google on their site. So replacing your search with something like Elasticsearch, WP Search, something other than just a light query to the database that isn't going to run very well will do wonders for you. So kind of touched on it a bit, but WooCommerce changes the scaling WordPress conversation. We're no longer just caching everything. We're not caching, or we're still caching. We don't solve all our issues with caching everything. The one thing that can't help you when you're dealing with 1,000 orders being placed on your site is caching it, because there's no data to cache until it's been inserted. There's something else that a lot of people do to try and scale their sites and scale WordPress, and that's by creating a whole bunch of replicas of their database. So a default way of scaling WordPress at a lot of hosts is have a master database server and a whole bunch of replicas in all the web servers. This can create some of the worst WooCommerce issues you've ever imagined if it gets out of control. So let's say you have those 1,000 orders, you're pushing them to your database, everything's going in, and then your replicas get lagged behind. So now customers on the site, they click add to cart, they go to their cart, product's not there. And the worst case scenario we ever had, our database replicas were lagged 9,000 seconds. So customer adds the product to their cart, they go to their cart, it's not there. So what do? They go back to the product, they then add it to their cart. It's still not there. What they don't know is every time they click add to cart, they're now resetting that whole timer of how often or how long it takes to update their cart. It gets worse though. So now you're finally at your cart, you waited the whole time, it's there, you go to checkout, you place your order, everything's good. Except you get to the thank you page and the data's not there yet, so now you have a blank thank you page. WooCommerce tries to send you a thank you email saying, thank you for your order, except the thank you email is blank because the database replica it pulled that data from doesn't have the data yet. And then PayPal even trying to tell the site, hey, this order is paid for through its IPN, can't tell the site that it's paid for because the site doesn't have the order on its replica yet. And I have spent a lot of time trying to clean this up when it broke. This wasn't Black Friday, it was another launch, but more time than I care to admit I spent trying to clean up replication lag, and WP Engine can attest I do not want replicas anywhere near our site. I push back anytime it's ever been suggested. So the question of the day, or the question I get asked is, can WooCommerce scale? Yes, with the catch. It's not going to happen overnight. Like Chris was saying earlier, you need people you're working with to continue to scale it. You need a hosting provider that you can sit down with and create a plan of how you're going to scale. I believe Alexa has graphs. You can go look at the traffic and the growth ColorPop has seen. They were a brand new company in May of 2014. And that went okay. We went all of 2015. We've grown. I think we went through 6 or 7 clusters at WP Engine within the past year. it's been my full-time job since June, and we're still figuring it out. Thankfully, a lot of what I'm figuring out, I'm trying to give the WooThemes team so they can try and create solutions, figure out ways to make it better. I send PRs as soon as I can, whenever I can. So this all gets back to how do you deal with a whole lot of orders being placed to your site all at once? Because at the end of the day, if you can't take orders, you can't make money and grow your business. There's a couple areas of WooCommerce that break earlier than others, are more apt to break, that have become a bit of a painful touch point for me because they've broken things so bad. My goal today is to give you the information where you know how you can avoid it breaking, and everything I'm talking about today is either fixed or in the process of being fixed in future versions of WooCommerce. So did you know that if you're using Memcache and you have a coupon that is used 70,000 times on your site, you're probably going to crash? And we found this out. I was at a Cubs game at Wrigley Field, and my contact at ColorPop before I was working full-time for them was at a play with their grandmother, and their site just randomly breaks for no reason. There's no launch. There's not a peak of traffic. It just crashes. It was up, mostly, kind of. So I think that was a Friday, and called WP Engine immediately, got in touch with their support. They had level 2, 3 tech ops, everyone working on it for 3 or 4 days, handing off shift to shift, trying to figure out what broke. Nothing happened. We didn't deploy code. Eventually, they narrowed it down to a single query that just for no reason started running about 100 times more often than it should have. And it was when a single coupon was being used on checkout. So what happens when you send that volume of queries to your database is database gets locked up, database server load gets high, it makes everything slower, and then the entire site crawls to a halt. The reason 70,000 is the magic number is if you do a query of your database and pull 70,000 rows of postmeta, it's about 1 megabyte in size. And Memcache, a very popular software that a lot of people use for caching on their server, by default has a data cap of 1 megabyte. So you would have never thought it, but 1 megabyte of meta on a coupon just crashed our site, ruined my weekend. Which kind of leads into postmeta. And postmeta is another thing that can kill your site on WooCommerce. And I keep talking about things that are going to kill your site on WooCommerce because it's happened to us. This isn't a, in theory, here's how your WooCommerce site's going to scale or WordPress site's going to scale. This is all from the trenches, what has happened to us and how you can avoid it. Every order that gets placed in WordPress or WooCommerce inserts about 38 post metas into the database. This is no extensions, no plugins, no gateway adding transaction IDs, nothing else happening. So if you process 1,000 orders, you now have, 38,000 post metas in your database. You process 1 million orders, 38 million post metas in the database. This is going to grow exponentially for the entire life of your site. If you're running subscriptions, it's going to grow exponentially on top of that exponential because everyone's renewing, hopefully. So there's an issue here inherently that WordPress by itself does not have a method to insert post metas in bulk. There's no function to call to say, insert these 10 post metas with these 10 keys and these 10 values. So I've submitted a track ticket. It's open. So anyone here who's at Automatic or works in track, check out 34848. Let's get that into core, because that would be awesome. I've got functions in there that is, they insert meta in bulk. And this graph here, we use New Relic to monitor the app's performance throughout the site or throughout the day. You can see 2 big red lines on this chart. The top is how long it's taking to run post-meta insert queries. The bottom is the throughput or volume of queries being run per minute. So I don't know how well you can see the numbers. The first line, about 0.5 milliseconds to run 750 post-meta inserts per minute. And the second line, about 0.55 milliseconds to insert the query or insert the meta, run the queries, and running at 250 calls per minute. And you can also see a little blue arrow and a sharp drop-off in the volume of queries being run. All I did at that time was put those functions into our site and combine the billing and shipping post-meta inserts of WooCommerce. That's it. That's about 22 post-metas. Combine those, we instantly dropped. And the reason I did this is because Cyber Monday, which Chris talked about earlier, over 2,000 add to carts per minute, our site did struggle for a little while because our post-meta table locked up. Our database server is 120 gig of RAM, 32 CPU cores, the largest server you could possibly deploy at WP Engine for a database, and we still killed it. And the reason we killed it is because postmeta kept inserting over and over for every single order. So I'll get into it a bit more detail later about things in WooCommerce that are going to change to help this. But simply by, in the software, combining these postmetas, I mean, if you can do a third the volume of inserts and the same amount of traffic, same amount of orders, software works better, your site runs better, so you get more conversions, your customers are checking out, and at the same time, you reduce your hardware costs. My account page. This was my most recent pain point within WooCommerce. So if you want to get a customer's orders, you use get posts, you then join it on the post meta table with the meta value or meta key of customer user. The meta value is the customer's ID. This is not a great query because the meta value of the post meta table isn't indexed. When you have 120 million rows of post meta, it does not run very well. To get 3 orders from a single user, query could take 10 to 20 seconds, depending on the load on the server. So I've seen the My Account page crash when there's 20 people on the My Account page, 50 people. I've seen it work fine when there's 100 people on it. There's no rhyme or reason. It just crashed randomly because the query was inefficient and the database server kind of fell apart. And it's because of right there. So a really great example. So Zach at WP Engine was monitoring our servers during a launch. I think it was a launch. I was on my way back to WP Engine offices. We just had dinner because I came down to Austin with them, and we sat in a room running load test after load test, like Chris was talking about earlier. And just randomly, for no reason whatsoever, traffic didn't change. Our database server load went from 8 to 110, just within minutes. We already had talked about how to disable the My Account page, so he knew kind of how we do it, and just to disable the page, he disabled it. Load dropped down to 2. So for no reason, things broke and immediately fixed themselves. This right here is when I fixed that solution, or fixed that problem. You can see on the left, this is from New Relic, by the way, the little light yellow area is the time spent in the database. And this is just average traffic, middle of the day. I think this was for a 3-day period. Middle of the day, you can see database performance is kind of slowing down and not working so well. And everything after that blue line is working fine. So what I had done to solve this is to fix that inefficient query. For now, what's happening is every time that order is placed, and for all our old orders, we have a custom table in the database. And in that table, there's 2 rows of data. There's the order ID and the customer ID. So after I put this in place, New Relic has a log of all the slow processes on the server. There was 1 slow My Account page request, and I didn't know why. It was just 1 from the hundreds that would be there before, and it took 5 seconds. So I figured, okay, why'd the My Account page take 5 seconds? What's going on? And I dug into it. Turns out this customer had 276 orders, and they decided to go to their My Account page. and with 120 plus million rows in our postmeta table and WooCommerce pretty much at core, this one simple fix just solved everything. So I've been talking kind of how eventually WooCommerce will be better, how we're working on things that could be better within it. So what does that mean? If you look on GitHub, this is the developers track. I assume most of you are developers. I'm sure there's store owners in here too. So we're all familiar with GitHub. I posted an issue on the WooCommerce repo a couple months ago. I think it was number 9375. And I proposed, let's move all the orders to a custom table because it'll be better. It's going to break all the sites. And I included that in there, everything I could possibly think of that will break when this happens. And then I included everything I could think of and all the data I had to show that this would help solve the issue. You would no longer have as exponentially growing postmeta table. For every one order, you would have about 4 or 5 postmetas. And because all the address info, user ID, user email, everything would be in the single table. Reporting would get better because it's all in one table. You can just pull it out. Problem with this is it's not easy. I don't envy Mike Jolly and his team of people that are going to have to figure out how to make this work because you remove custom post types and the entire UI is gone now. But it has to happen. Good news here is out of the box WooCommerce in the next year or two, I'd say, likely will be far more scalable than it is now. Right now, what you can do to make yourself scalable is, as Chris mentioned earlier, find a developer you can work with that loves testing things, loves just digging into the data and figuring out what you can do to make the site more scalable. My full-time job since June has been make it work. Just make WooCommerce work. Change the hardware, software, whatever we need to do. Just find a way to continue scaling in WooCommerce. And since then, we have grown and grown and grown, making the issues even harder. They just pop up randomly like the My Account page or the coupon. And what you need to do is be prepared to solve these issues that will just pop up without warning. The good news also is this is about all that's broken at the core of it, other than server hardware or dealing with having a tons of traffic and having a cache that can handle that. My Account page, coupons, and postmeta, if you solve those 3 issues, you can grow a pretty big site. Like I said, we're number 625 in Alexa for traffic. So I don't have a ton of information to give you just to say you can scale it all right now without working hard on it. Twitter, I'm at PM Garman. You can shoot me an email, patrick@garman.io. I try and post every now and then this new information I find of what can make WooCommerce scale better. That's all at pmgarman.me. I'll be outside, right outside of these doors if you just want to find me, ask any questions. Actually, I won't be there. I will be in the Skyverge and Prosperous help desk. I'll help you there. Have any questions, feel free to ask. Everything I've been doing has been a learning process. As far as I know, we're one of the largest WooCommerce sites out there, so no one's had these issues to run into to then solve. So if you have concerns, feel free to ask.